Hey everybody, this is Aaron the Pedantic. The last time I did a Old School Essentials campaign vlog update, I had no hair on my head. Well, except for face, but you know. Whoops, my bad. So, yeah, it's been a long time. And one of the things I realized I've never done is salute to our fallen soldiers in this great war against chaos. So let's take a moment to reflect on our fallen fighters and clerics and magic users and etc. So we have Delg Glanig, level 1 dwarf, death by kobold. We have Percival, level 1 fighter, death by insect. By the way, this started in mid-January, just to give you a sense of time. We have Nathan, level 1 thief, death by insect. Frederick, also death by insect. He was a retainer, though. I'll try and note those. We don't use retainers too often, but we do use them occasionally. Osmond, death by wolf. Tolly, death by wolf. Rourke, the red-handed, that was a retainer. By the way, I think okay, so that's the first thief to die at Site A, and it's definitely not going to be the last. One of the players put down some money to give him a nice tombstone with an inscription of the map they had so far. Very interesting choice, but very cool. Snippy. Now, Snippy, I believe, was a retainer, but I didn't notate it as such. Death by poison gas. Yeah, he was. That was rogue thief number 2 to die at Site A. It's kind of a recurring theme. Yolkin, death by shadow. Oh gosh, that was heartbreaking. I'll probably get to that. I think that was after our last update, because that was mid-February, and I don't know if I had covered that. Olent Glanig, so brother to Delg, which is sad. So now both of them have died. At least the same clanmates. I'm not sure about brother. Death by Big Bony Man. He was not on the list. Oh, yeah, that's gonna come up in a little bit. Briggs Blackheart, death by Bone Golem. He was also not on the list. Samson, baptism by fire. Samson was retainer number 3 to die at Site A. That was a thief. Father Atacorn, death by insult. Garfield, death by snoo snoo. Skippy, death by pit. John, death by bone snake. Hanson, death by sandstone bashing to the head. Baldric, death by curse. Now, this is not me that was running these. So, as I've said before, we have multiple referees. We now have, so there's myself. Now we have Hayden. We have Shield. We have Magpie. We have, I know there's somebody else. Hold on. No, Oz is wanting to. Did I said Magpie, right? I said Magpie. Yeah. I guess those are the referees right now. And then Dark Knight is interested in doing referee stuff, which is good because it gives me more time to work on more dungeons, because they've been finally getting through mine. What is going on with... You know, maybe for tradition's sake, I'll bring Gimdall with me on this one. Okay. So, get off my neck, man. I did put him there. Anyway, so we have, let's say, Porter, death by curse. I don't know if that's someone named Porter or a Porter. We've been mostly putting only named persons in here, but Sacco, death by curse. Scotty, death by explosion. Ludwig, the Mercurial, dead by Dwergar. Audric, death by giant Dwergar. There were some more that I accidentally removed on the death by explosion one. That was in Magpies Dungeon, and I missed a few because there were a lot of people that were just talking in the graveyard section, and so whenever I was trying to delete the extraneous comments, I accidentally deleted one of the records. So there were a couple deaths that we'll have to try and figure out who they were. Or maybe just I know there's 3 other deaths. Thorn Fizzle Blast, Magic User 1, killed by Rolling Pillar. It looks like there hasn't been any since then. That's very interesting. We're gonna have to bring those rookie numbers up. No deaths since last week. So we'll have to see about that. Anyway, yeah, it's been a whole thing. So I don't think that I really mentioned Yolkin and how he died. So I think that's probably the next thing to bring up. Okay. Yeah. I think I did, actually. I think I did. So the whole thing there, that actually tells me where I left off, was that they fought a Hydra. And this is when they learned that XP for killing things is very, very, very minor, because they fought and killed a Hydra, and they got, like, between all of them, like 50-something XP, something really, really, really paltry. And it was a little bit more than that, but it was still just barely nothing. And they got no treasure for it. One of them was starting to get a little bit curious about this pool in the ground in this dungeon. These mysterious pools that they found. They found two different ones. And one of them had just a whole bunch of snakes in it and gold in the bottom. And then the other one seems to just have random sea monsters. So whenever they left, and whenever they were leaving after killing the Hydra, and some of their resources were spent, but basically what happened was, on their way out, they were struck by shadows on a surprise round, and then Yolkin, who was in the front, just got butchered by these shadows. It was rough. Yolkin was, at that time, one of the highest level characters that we had, and he was awesome. You get attached to characters, even from the DM seat. If a character's been around for a little bit, you get attached to them. You don't really get attached to the ones that are brand new, just because you're just like, that one's probably not sticking around. But whenever a higher level character bites it, especially in such a way that you just didn't see coming, it's kind of rough. But the player he took it in stride. He's like, okay, I'm rolling up my next one. And I was like, damn, this is old school right here. This is old school. Somebody dies, their character dies, and they're immediately just rolling up the next one. So that happened. So they got out from that place, losing one of their best people and gaining almost nothing other than the satisfaction of knowing that they killed a Hydra. And Nikar carved a piece of the flesh from the Hydra to take with him. I'm not going into why he does that, just because I don't think that's public information at this time. But so that was the Monday game, Site F. And then after that, Site A. So I know that I didn't talk about this one. At least I'm pretty sure. I may have. So I apologize if I'm retreading. But what ended up happening at Site A, oh well, I have so much to go over, it won't hurt. What happened at Site A was they finally got into this magic user's lair, and I gave her a Valley accent, and had her magic mouth basically be the one to tell them that they need to give the password. They had to find the password in another place in this fort, the Kobold Fort, which they found and they thought to use, which was good, because if you speak the wrong one, you get burnt to death. Basically just a pillar of flame kind of shoots outward. So they were fortunate enough to say the right password the first time. And they got into her lair. What they not quickly, they eventually learned was that it actually takes them to an entirely different place. This doorway, it actually just takes them to a completely different place. They're not even on site anymore at that point. Because they go in and then they see that there are, I think 5. It's been a while since I've been there. It's been pretty crazy. There's like 5 other doors, right? Parallel not parallel. Yeah, parallel with the one that they just came in. You just, so here's their door, one over there, one over there, one over there, etc. And they each have this writing above them in a foreign language. And so then whenever they kind of realize what's happened, basically, the wall, the door behind them becomes impassable. They can't get through it. It's locked. And this creature is in front of them, this large flesh golem. Or actually, he's more of a bone golem, I guess would be the better way to say it. That was this was interesting because then they're like, oh, we just have to use the password to get back through again. But what they didn't know is that the password is different on this side. I had specifically set it up a certain way, and I'm pretty sure they figured it out. Otherwise, they did figure it out. So I can go ahead and say it now. All they had to do was look at what language, they had to decipher, like, what language is this word written in? And can I read it? And then I just need to say the words open door in that language, basically. So there was kind of like the ancient tongue that is kind of equivalent to like Old English, I guess, for us, like old English, which some of them kind of have an inkling toward, but not everybody. There was the language of the far north. There's the language of the dwarves, the language of the gnomes, the language of the not so far north, just stuff like that. And basically, they what was interesting was that they figured out about how to open the one to the far north because they had a barbarian, and so he knew that language, and so they figured how to open. Actually, I don't know if they did that one. I think it might have been the dwarf one that they tried. It was the dwarf one. That's right. They tried the dwarf one. And of course, not of course, but they try. So it basically, whenever you say the magic words, it gets all wibbly wobbly. The door does, so you can tell it's kind of like a portal. And then they try to go through. And they're just like, I'm gonna run through, and then smash into a brick wall, basically, which is on the other side of this portal. And they tried a few others, and then they stopped because they were all brick walls. And what's really cool about this is then the players really start theorizing about all kinds of stuff. But the funny thing is, again, like I said, the one that they for sure could get out through, that they knew of, was the one that they came in through. And they didn't think to say the words open door in the old tongue until way too late. So instead, they're like, okay, well, here's this bone golem. It wants to say hi. Let's say hi back. And they start fighting with it. But what they don't realize is that this thing is basically, it can't be harmed by anything that's not magical for the most part. So they kind of flail up against it kind of harmlessly. There's this plan that was concocted to wrap it in rope or something like that, just to bind it. And they were about to start trying to do that. But before that happened, they were like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just run down. Oh, damn it. I cursed. Sorry. I'll have to put a spicy symbol on this one. So they start running down the hall and, past the thing. And they find that the doors are locked. Well, they're in the middle of combat, so they can't really take the time to try and pick a door, really. Do the lockpick thing. So they have one of the players is like, okay, screw it. I'm going to just try and chop one of the doors down, not Silence of the Lambs. Shoot. The Shining style. I don't know why I thought of Silence of the Lambs. So he's working on that. He keeps on rolling poorly every time he tries. Now they're all stuck in a hallway with this thing. And as they almost walked into another room, they found these wooden golems that started coming to life. And so then by that point, they had a ton of wooden golems that were shuffling behind this bone golem. And then you had this this very daring dwarven warrior, Olent. It was either Olent or Briggs. Actually, I think it was Briggs. Both of them were dwarves. And they both are between the main, force of the group and this bone golem. So they take them on, and they get pulverized almost instantly. Just smashed to pieces. It was rough. Again, these were characters that had been around for a little while, so, sad. But, so they perish, and this magical axe clatters to the ground, and then after that, you have the bone golem kind of like moving toward them. And basically then they're like, okay, screw it. We're going to just hurl some Molotovs or whatever. So the bone golem is actually not harmed by fire. But what they ended up doing was casting light upon its eyes. So then I had to think to myself, does this thing have like actual eyes, or does it have like magical eyes, or, how exactly is that going? And the way that I kind of pictured it was I was thinking that it had like natural eyes, basically, because this is just kind of like a alchemical, put together kind of thing that's been imbued with negative energy. But kind of still under control, if that makes sense. So I was thinking fleshy eyes. So if you cast light upon fleshy eyes that need direct vision, you have this light that's just obscuring it, then yeah, it's going to be blind. So one of the rules in the game in BX OSE is that if you're blinded by that spell, you cannot fight, basically. Now, this is something that I'm actually, I've talked to them about changing. I thought that it would be a better idea to adapt the first edition rule on it, which is basically you get a -4 on attack. Your AC is getting a 4 penalty. Your saves, you get penalties, that kind of thing. So that way you're better off not being blind, but it doesn't mean the fight's over, because there's no reason that this guy can't just swing around wildly, basically. And so what ended up happening was, while he was swinging around wildly, and at that point, because he was blind and, I wasn't actually implementing that yet, I thought of it more as just kind of like a hazard. So basically do a dexterity check to avoid the possibility of getting hit. And then even then I had to kind of like do a probability of, well, he's swinging wildly. How likely is it that he's going to swing in the right spot? Well, maybe 1 in 6 or 2 in 6. I think I did 2 in 6. So anyway, one of them managed to leap past him after they had hurled some flaming oil flasks over his shoulders and basically burned the wooden golems to death. Then they retrieved the axe, and the magical axe, which was the only magical item in the party, really the only chance that they had to survive. Everybody was like, this is a TPK that we're watching right now, guys. Like, we can't kill this thing, and it can kill us. And they were almost not even going to try casting light on it, because they were like, this thing probably has magical eyesight. There's really no point. And they just chopped the motherfucker down to pieces after they collected the axe. So that was how that transpired. But they did lose the 2 dwarves in the process, and that was kind of rough. So after that happened, they were able to scour some good stuff from the alchemy lab in the magic user's place. They stole some things out of the library. They got some new scrolls and stuff like that. They did go back into the room where the wooden golems came out of. And there was a nice, pretty door over there. And one of the players that had their PC had died. I think it was Hayden. So Briggs, the guy that played Briggs, he took over the thief NPC, and decided to try and pick the lock on the door, the big nice door. Well, again, this is still in the magic user's place, so he approaches the door, and basically the jet of flame shoots out. This is one of the things that they kind of learned the hard way. This is actually how Snippy died. I mentioned Snippy earlier. Was that in the Kobold Fort? This place was protected by this magic user's magical trap. So you walk into this room, and then this magical poison gas emits and kills you. So, they're kind of learning. It seems like you have to have passwords to get into places. So Samson was the thief that he was controlling that died by fire. So the next week we go back to Site F. They actually had a really good run, a flawless run, basically, as far as I can recall, where they had already killed the Hydra and everything. Well, this time they decided, let's go back to that pool. And I was like, y'all are really gonna go back to it? And they're like, let's see what's going on there. So they talked to the barbarians on the way in. The barbarians have kind of set up shop, and they're planning on attacking the Serpent King below, but they're not quite prepared yet. They're waiting for their chieftain. And on their way out last time, they said, hey, y'all should go check out this room. It has this Hydra we killed. And whenever they talk to them again, the barbarians say, well, when we went in there the other day, there was a whale in there. And they're like, what, a whale? So they go back down to it, and that time I don't think there was anything. I think there had been a merman at one point. And then they're kind of, and then the merman went away, and then they're like, oh, that's too bad. Well, anyway, so what they decided to do was, they're like, there has to be something interesting in this place, and of course there was, because I tend to like, usually there's something going on in places usually, and so they decide to get the person who has the best constitution to hold their breath, and then they kind of planned out this diving thing, so they had to have a nice weight to help them go down faster, for them to use to dive quicker, and to try and make little oxygen things that they could use to get a little bit of breath while they're down there, and all that kind of stuff. And so what they do is they do a deep dive, and as he dives into the pool, what he notices is that the walls that they had seen before, they kind of made it look more like a well, I guess, that they were illusory. And what he actually saw was just ocean, and that there was just like this ring that you could look up into, and you could see the ceiling and the people, in that room that he dove from, and that up there, like, then around it, there's it's just ocean, and so he, and like very, very, like he's in there pretty deep, surprisingly, not so deep that it's like crushing him to death or anything like that, but and looking around, he saw some wreckage from ships, and he decided to go check it out, and he pulled some treasure, and so they got some serious treasure, like basically they had him like go back down and then like hook it, basically, and then they just kind of like hauled it back up with what chain they had, and they pulled this treasure out, and they got a lot of really great stuff. Whenever I rolled that treasure, I was like, oh my god, there's like a wand of cold rather. There was just some really cool. There's a lot of really cool stuff in there. One of them was a cursed scroll, and Nikar read it, and he started turning into a fish. So he had to go off to the clerics, and he's like, can y'all like can y'all cure me of this curse or whatever? And the way I looked at it, I was like, well, this Bishop Lawrence is a higher level cleric. He's going to probably have that spell ready usually. So then it's just a matter of seeing if anybody else has needed it. So, just a probability roll. And I was like, oh no, he does have it actually. But the question is, does he want to give it to you? Because who knows, somebody else might need it later today. He also kind of expects a donation. So a donation was made. The curse was reversed, and it was still funny because then the rest of the session was just people making jokes about him being a fish man. So that was pretty awesome. But they retrieved a whole ton of treasure. It was a big haul. And it was one of those things where they had done so much legwork that was finally paying off, that it was just really neat. It was really neat. So after that happened, basically people got a big payout. Then some of the players were like, all right, so I'm going to cash in for the evening, basically. And a few others were like, I want to go do some other stuff a little bit. And so, they were kind of rolling up characters, and I had a few players that were like, I really don't like this character. Like, their stats are terrible. I don't want to play this character or whatever. And, for some reason I was like in an extra like humorous mood, and somebody said, could I just like go up to the barbarians and insult them and like let them kill me, basically. And then for some reason in my tired brain, and just having laughed all night about the fish jokes, I was like, yeah, go ahead. So Father Atacorn, a very old man with like 1 HP and very terrible stats, like goes up to these two barbarians outside of Side F and is just like, hey, fuck your mother kind of thing. And he gets murdered. And then another player says, well, could mine go up there and like flirt with him? And so then I had to do, a check to see like how receptive they are, and then like what their preferences were. And then I was like, okay, so that one has death by snoo, which if you've watched Futurama, then you might catch that reference. But some people may say that was a problematic joke, but whatever. All right, so then the next day is whenever you have this would be Hayden's dungeon, I believe, which has, from everything I understand about it, is insanely deadly. I mean, he racked up 4 or 5? 6 kills in one night. I know make it sound like we're out to kill player characters, but like, he made an incredibly deadly dungeon. But here was the thing, is that one person got out, and they got out with like a ton of XP because they came out with a ton of gold because everybody else died, and they happened to pull out this gold. I'm not going to spoil how that happened. Somebody else might, maybe in the comments. Now, then it was, let's see, 5 days after that. Okay, so this is Magpies Dungeon. And again, there were like 4 deaths in that one. That one was rough. Basically, what happened was whenever they were entering the dungeon, there was a gas that was emitted. Basically, like methane gas had been, filling this place. And whenever they opened it, methane gas comes out, lit torches ignite, explosion, basically. So a whole bunch of characters died just immediately opening the entrance to the dungeon. So that was a thing that happened. So then we get to Shield. So Shield's dungeon, I had the opportunity to play in it as a player, and it was a lot of fun. I played as a paladin with 1 HP, and like 18 AC though. But still, I was dead certain that my character was going to die. And he didn't. He made it out with some XP. He's not quite level 2 yet, but he's alive. I haven't had the chance to play since, but it was a lot of fun. I really like to play in that one. I just, my schedule sucks. So then he managed to run on the 4th, and looks like so this was rough. Okay, so Audric, as I've mentioned a few times, I've mentioned that character a few times. He was the highest level cleric that we had, a level 6 cleric, and a very virtuous, kind soul, basically. And level 6, and he died. I don't know the context too much. I know that there are Dwergar in this dungeon, and this particular Dwergar enlarged itself, and then critted on its attack. So it was just like massive damage on Audric, and he couldn't survive it, even though he has quite a bit of HP, or had quite a bit of HP. So what happened then was Audric was actually the first one to enter the new tier of game. So because of that, one of the things that I decided was, they're already about to offer him a special mission. They're going to want him to be alive if at all possible. But I had to ask myself, how many clerics are there out there that can cast, Raise Dead? And how much of a demand is there for that spell? What is the time frame that's needed? Because as it's written, it's like every level after 10th level or something like that, it's like, or 7th level, it's like an extra day, and normally you get like 10 days or something like that. So I had to kind of work that out, and they didn't retrieve the body because they couldn't, because they would have all died. So then what I decided was, once the bishop received word of Audric's passing, he basically organized and paid for an expedition to retrieve it. And then after they retrieved the body, if they did, then if there was enough time, they would try and get it back to the capital, where basically the only person in like this whole territory that can cast Raise Dead with that kind of a time frame, because it's going to take a week to get to the capital, basically. It was going to take them about a week to prepare for the expedition. That they would have to get somebody, some people to retrieve the body, and I was like, you know what? He would probably petition to have the Archbishop make this happen, basically. So he was kind of the beneficiary of being the first person to reach that particular level. They did successfully get him back. They did indeed. And without any deaths in the retrieval, it looks like. The last death that we have on record was fairly while back. It kind of surprises me. So that was Thorn Fizzleblast. Killed by a rolling pillar. Smashed like a pancake. I'm not really sure exactly what happened there. That wasn't my game. But I can say, that what happened, one thing that happened that I'm aware of, is that they took Moose, who is now Bull, out of the cleric church, and took him with them to retrieve Audric. And it was successful. So now they're just, I often am asked, so have we gotten any word about Audric's body, basically. And one thing is interesting. So the guy that plays Audric, he had other characters, and he rolled up another one. So he was just like, I'm ready to move forward. Basically, he's just waiting to hear if anything happens. And he's leveled up his other characters. Like, he has another cleric that's like level 4 or 5 already, because he's been, just kind of doing the grindstone, basically. And then he has another fighter that has gotten pretty high level, comparatively speaking. So it just keeps on growing, really. There are quite a few decently leveled characters, and I'm about to really start having to get into the second tier of play, which means writing a lot of quests, but it should be a lot of fun. So I can barely remember what happened last week, and yet I can remember a lot of this stuff. I think it's just been kind of crazy. So the magic user layer, they did they used what they had found in the magic user layer to get the password for the poison gas room. So they went back to site A, and then one of them was like, all right, so I'm going to speak the password. And so the room turned from this kind of red glow to a blue glow. And then at that point, he was able to go in there and retrieve the chest that was full of all kinds of goodies. And then they found in there was another note, basically, or I had a treasure map, basically. No, it was a note. It was a note to the magic user's lost love. You know, she knew that he could get in there to get that stuff, but the real thing that she wanted him to have was buried nearby. And there's a map. They were able to, I just kind of described what the map showed, and they were able to deduct, okay, that is clearly on this property. And then they just kind of had to do some comparisons. They're like, okay, well, this structure is not here anymore, but it would be kind of around this area. And they kind of narrowed it down to a specific patch of dirt and then started digging. They found it. They jumped down, and there was another one of those wooden golems. They killed it, and they retrieved a sentient sword. Was it a sword? It was a sword of dwarven make that was speaking out loud. And ever since then, I really haven't been able to do much with the Wednesday crew. We're finally rolling again tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes. So they had big successes. No deaths on that one. They got huge payouts because all this work that they had put in on the site, where they had all these deaths and very, very little payouts, finally they were getting some good stuff out of it. And, you know, like, I created this dungeon, you know, well before they started. I was just like, let's just see what they do, right? And it just so happened that they went through all of these very rough parts very early on, and then eventually all that was left is the rest, you know. So they're going to that site again tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes. Last night was pretty awesome. So what did happen last night? Oh yeah, Site C. I completely forgot to mention Site C. So Site C is a goblin cave, and they had after the Hydra thing? No, it was after the Hydra thing, when they were doing Site F, where they retrieved the treasure from the pirate ship. They decided to go and try and do this one quest. So I had put a listing that there was a new site, and that this site had been on the list for a while. But I put down some new info that there was a barbarian that came back from that site and said that his family had been kidnapped, and that they were there, and he had escaped from the goblin cave, and that he wanted help to help retrieve his family. So it was really cool. This is when Audric was still alive. It was Audric and Hans and some other characters. Hans being a barbarian who is now also getting up there in levels. I think Hadrian. I don't think he was there, but Orphan was there. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Orphan was there. But anyway, so they ended up finding a secret entrance to the cave. They climbed down. It was really interesting that they happened to find that secret entrance, because of the fact that it actually took them very close to where the family was being kept. And so it was almost like a SWAT team infiltration. They go in, they go around for a bit, they sneak up and then murder some goblins as they sleep. They kept on throwing gold coins on the bodies, like to try and show, okay, they were killing each other over these gold coins. And then it's like they'd kill more, and then they'd drag more corpses onto the beds where these bodies were, and then put more gold coins down. And so they're actually spending money at this dungeon. It was pretty hysterical. But it was don't worry about that. It's just my phone. It was great. It was great. So they found his family pretty quick. Just a little bit of exploration. They got the family out. They left, and on their way out, it looks like they were about to be chased, but they managed to hold it off. I think they may have. No, it wasn't that time. So they returned there again last week because they kind of decided that Site F is a fucking terror place. You know, the last time that they had been in Site F was after Yolkin died. They got all this treasure. They went back. They were going deeper, and they encountered a wraith. It turned out the wraith was actually Yolkin's spirit, and like I think somebody suffered level drain. Oh yeah, the barbarian. So one of the barbarians went with them and went down with them and suffered level drain. And after that, they were like, wow, we do not need to be here without any high level clerics, basically, because they couldn't turn the thing. And it was a whole shit mess to actually kill it again. So they did take care of the wraith, and they found. So one of the things that happened was they found out that the chieftain had arrived, the chieftain of the barbarians that were outside Site F, and the lycanthropes and all that. And they tried to raid down deeper into the dungeon. I left this out. My bad. So they tried to go in, and then the next thing they know, there is a barbarian that was from that site who comes back and tells them all his people are dead and that he wants help, to try and, claim vengeance, basically. And he informs them about this room that all of a sudden, he was the rear guard, and all of a sudden he was cut off from them as the door closed. And they, next thing he knows, like there's sounds of battle on the other side, and then just nothing, basically, and that he was cut off. He wasn't able to get back in there. And so the players knew there was some serious shit going on in there. So the time that they discovered the wraith, basically, they also went to go investigate that. They brought that barbarian with them. The barbarian was actually killed by the wraith, and then they dispatched it. And then they actually got to the room in question. So the room in question, they get to the threshold, and they can see into the room, and they see these dead bodies, and they see these 3 thrones on the southern end, and that they are covered in these vines, these thick vines, with these kind of tree-like people sitting in the thrones, just completely motionless. And my players are smart. So they're like, okay, we have some tree daddies over there. We have dead bodies. There was a question about, could we retrieve one of the dead bodies without getting into the room? They knew that getting into the room was a bad idea from the hint that the barbarian gave them, basically. So they said, fuck it. They took some flasks of oil, and then they just threw some flasks in there and started setting the thing on fire. Next thing they know, so then they stepped in, threw a flask, stepped out. And so then I had to do a quick little check, basically, because then there was a question of, did you get out the door before it closed behind you? And it turned out to be a yes. I also had to see, did you happen to see what happened over there when the door came down? So they might get a clue about how that works. The answer was no. So the door closes for a bit. Didn't it? It did close. Yeah, it did close. So they're burning for a while. On the other side, they kind of hear like squealing or whatever. So they say, you know what, we need to get in there and kill this thing because we have the advantage now. So they decide to try and pull the door up. So one of the things that was found in the pirates' treasure was gauntlets of ogre strength. So somebody with gauntlets of ogre strength, and then another person who's also very strong. They're pulling the door open. And so they're pulling the door open. They start wedging it open. Somebody drives some spikes in to keep it up. They get into the room. They find that this thing was on fire, and it was trying to go towards the center of the room. They keep burning the little bastard, and then they happen to deliver a finishing blow. And I rolled the hit dice, and I was kind of sad. I was like, oh man. So anyway, he turns into this charred husk and falls through the center of the room onto this fountain that has this strange milk in it. So one of the players decides, I want to drink the milk. And I was like, you're going to drink the milk? Okay. So he drinks it. And basically what it does is it kind of gives him poison glands, like a snake, because it's kind of what this whole place is. It's all about snakes. And so it kind of makes him sick, and like it makes him, had him do like a save versus poison to see like how well does his system handle it, and he failed it. So basically it's like he had this really bad swelling headache, and then eventually he started vomiting up venom, and he's like, cool, man, I'm going to take some more of this. But it was cool. See, I think they actually did take some of that milk with them, and they got some treasure out of that thing. But after that, they decided, like we're not going to go back there. They did find out that the mechanism for the door was basically that it stays open as long as somebody is sitting at the throne. The moment that they stand up, the door closes. I thought it was a neat little thing. So then we go back to Site C last night, and that was something. So the week before, actually, they had killed more goblins, and I keep a running tally of how many they've killed and how many are in there. Then I keep taking factors of like what's moved in there since they left. Well, the first time that they went there, they killed like 8 of them. The second time that they went in, they killed like 12 more, and they also actually it was like 14 more, and they killed a troll. That was a cool fight. They really lucked out on that. Somebody almost died. It was very harrowing. But they killed a troll. They killed a bunch of goblins. They killed like a wolf rider, all kinds of stuff. And then this last time, there were not very many goblins left, but they didn't know that. They had captured a goblin, and then they charmed him. And they used one of the dwarven retainers to translate as they spoke with him. And so what they found out was, they're like, all right, here's our map. Can you fill in the rest? And then so like I took the map that I had given them, from the cartographers, and then I took it into paint, and I used like the crayon filter, and I just like crayolaed in like some kind of shitty map drawings to give them an idea where stuff was. And so they go back into this place, and man, they cleaned house. They went in and they butchered the 2 bugbears that they were very fortunate to not encounter the last time. The last time they also went in and saw in this pool was this enormous mass of flesh, basically, that had these arms and legs sticking out of it. And it was kind of like 20 feet long, and it was just in this water, in front of a really profane shrine, basically. So they had asked about a shaman, whenever they're interviewing the guy. And, so he's like, yeah, there's a shaman. He's an Ignog the Magnanimous, and, he serves Maglubiet, and, he is given birth to Narlek, the fledgling god. And so they had this grand plan. They're like, what we're going to do is we're going to go in, we're going to like try and kill the rest of the goblins, clean them out. We're going to try and kill the shaman, and then we're going to come out, and we're going to get like some iron stuff, and we're going to catch the lightning, because this fleshy thing was shooting out lightning bolts randomly. And we're going to catch the lightning with this and have it disperse, so that way we got a lightning rod and we're safer. and we're gonna kill that god thing. And I'm just over here like, this sounds awesome. This sounds awesome. But what they decided to do was to take in the lightning rod stuff after they leave, and then come back basically, which was really going to work out pretty well because they were packed full of gold by the time they encountered this thing. So most of the stuff they did, it was just kind of butchery. And the only downside that they really experienced was they kept on using oil flasks because this is kind of like their go-to. And the carbon monoxide, combined with the fact that they were in closed, areas, meant that I had them do some poison saves. Not like for death, basically, because it's just like lightheadedness and poor motor skills kind of thing. Anyway, so they kill the chieftain in this really cool fight where basically, they charge in, they start setting things on fire, they start smashing, stabbing. There's a sleep spell that catches all of the rest of them. So, we're talking like 9 goblins and, the chieftain. They happened to roll like 9 hit die worth, and I think they'd already killed like 4 goblins. So there were still 5 goblins, and then this chieftain that had like another several hit die. So they all pass out. And while they're deciding what to do with them, then the wolf riders next door, they heard the commotion, so they come in. So there's a fight with them where the players threw caltrops at the entrance, and they poured oil down, and then they set it on fire. So then there's just this whole thing where some of the wolves were brave enough to jump over the flames and attack, and then the goblin riders themselves were too cowardly to do it. So they were launching arrows, and it was just a cool fight. But what ended up happening was no. The magic user. Oh shit! I'm really bad with names, and he's like one of the first ones. Nikar. Nikar casts web on these wolves as they come in, which ignites, because of the fire. So it's just like this cocoon of burning death that envelops like these goblins and wolves. And then after that, they're collecting the gold that's in this room and all the treasure. And while that's happening, I roll a wandering monster check. It turns out to be a wandering monster. I roll on the chart. It turns out to be, basically, I have a mechanic I use where after almost everything is dead, the likelihood that the big bad thing appears is more likely. And that's what happened to be the case. And to them, they're like, this thing can't even get out of the water, right? It can't even walk around. And to me, I was like, well, yeah, I mean, that was the case whenever the thing wasn't ready yet, but it's ready now, basically. So what ends up happening is this fleshy thing starts pushing its way into the room, which is a very narrow room, to the point where it like makes it where there's not even a way away. There's not even any gaps for air, basically. So immediately some of the players were like, oh my God, like if we, use our flasks right now, we're going to die. we're just going to asphyxiate, basically. So the heat was on, basically. So they start fighting this thing. The first person who strikes it, gets shocked by it. So every time that you strike it with a metal weapon, it basically shocks you and potentially paralyzes you. So they're like, oh shit, so it was pretty rough, but Nikar had a wand of cold. Remember, he retrieved that from the pirate ship. He used that. He doesn't know how many charges it has though. So one of these days he's going to pull it out. He's going to try and use it. It's not going to work. Actually, I would say that more likely than not, before that happens, he'll probably notice there's no magic left in it. But anyway, so he uses the wand of cold. It does a lot of damage. There's some the magic battle axe is used against it. I want to say that somebody did hurl some fire, and then that was whenever they were starting to be like, oh, this might not be a good idea. And I think that might have been kind of like the finishing blow was around that time. So then basically this big fleshy thing just starts dying. And they're like, what do we do now? So they have to kind of carve their way through it. And so they're carving their way through this fleshy carcass. And as they're doing so, basically, Hans is the one who's deepest into it. Gets grabbed by the neck and shocked by this very big, beefy arm. And that's how they find out that the real boss is still quite alive. And what they don't know is that this thing that's been, waddling around and shooting lightning bolts and stuff like that is just the womb, basically. So this fully formed adult creature, this fledgling god, comes out of the womb, shocks the shit out of him, does a pretty considerable amount of damage. And fortunately, he made his save for paralysis. And I thought Hans was going to die at that point, but he's quite a beefy barbarian, so he was still in it. And then after that, they kind of start barraging him with all they have. Another wand of cold blast comes out. I don't know if that happened quite. No, actually, that was the last ditch thing. They were trying to see what he was capable of first. First it was like try and burn him, try and stab him, that kind of thing. They ended up with the same situation where if they stabbed him, they'd get shocked if it was made of iron, basically, or if, some kind of other conductive metal. And whenever he would touch them, it was very painful, very shocking. And then once he kind of actually stepped out of the womb, and actually they were able to see him. They saw that he had a gemstone stuck, right in here, and that he actually was shooting lasers out of it. And so it was looking kind of grim for a moment until the wand of cold came out and finished him off. I failed my save. It was a ton of damage, and it overtook him, combined with all the other stuff. So they basically busted his corpse into pieces, since it was frozen, and took the gemstone with them and cut their way out before they ran out of breath. And so this was actually, as far as I know, the first dungeon they fully cleared, and it happened very quickly because it just so happened that everything was coming at them. And so it was cool. I'm looking forward to tomorrow to see what happens in the Wednesday game. And I'm still working on more dungeons because even though Site F and Site A are not completely done, they seem to not be wanting to go too much deeper. So, we'll see. We'll just have to see. So I'm working on this one that's an underwater dungeon. And then there's a tower that I'm working on. And we have some other players that are wanting to do some refereeing. And basically, I'm more than willing to let some other players take the reins for a while so that I can spend more time making more dungeons, basically, that are more in-depth. So, and also, it doesn't hurt that I can spend some more time on the YouTube stuff. But anyway, so that is the recap. It had to be a long one, almost an hour. Holy crap. But there was a lot to go through. And if you stuck around this long, then you're a champion. Take care. Have an awesome day. Feel free to join us in our game. We have plenty of room. So see y'all later.